Good morning from Tech Central and welcome to our Highspeed Analytics webinar. Thank you all for joining us today as we discuss how to turn data into insights. I'm going to hand over now to Daniel Robus, our host and moderator for today's session.
Good morning, and thanks for allowing me to facilitate and moderate this session. It's one which is fairly daunting for me because BI is almost a sacred area in business. But before we begin, I'd like to thank all of the folks who have joined us today. We know that our IT environment is holding so much together in this time of COVID and this time of disruption in South Africa. And we respect the time that you're giving us and just what you're doing from both an operational, a morale, and a technical perspective. And thank you for the time. We hope you enjoy it and have it as a time to relax and learn new stuff. So let me introduce you to our panel. We're really privileged to have, his full name is Slawomir Kumka, who is the Executive Director and Head of IBM Poland R&D Lab. He is a can-do leader who has got over 20 years track record of successful leadership in projects and teams and leading and educating the market. Then we've got an old friend of mine, Douglas Clarke. He's old, I'm the friend. Douglas and I actually started working together in about 2000, and he was in BI already then, and already I was looking to him to lead me on these BI projects. Douglas is the CTO for BITanium and is a partner from an IBM perspective. We've heard that. He has designed, deployed, and supports some of the biggest data environments in South Africa. Today, Douglas is more of a leader of architects, developers, engineers, and analysts, and data scientists, just to throw it in, delivering solutions to customers. So advising on this journey of how to take a piece of string and make it useful. And then last but not least is the youngster of the group, also 20 years of experience, Matthew. I think actuaries just age differently. You're on a different time quantum to the rest of us. He is part of the Discovery Health team. He's well known in his environment and outside. He works with data scientists, taking data and making it work for Discovery Health, and has stepped out of leading some amazing... What are you doing at the moment, Matt? Where are you meant to be instead of spending time with us?
Don't tell my colleagues, but I'm currently chairing the Private Healthcare Information Standards Committee on developing guidelines for the healthcare industry, the private healthcare industry. So I've stepped out of that meeting to join you, but it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much to Daniel and Carrie for having me.
Thank you. And we're actually going to start with you, Matthew, and just talking about your journey in high-speed analytics, big data, and how you're using it. So we don't usually do this. So I'm out of my comfort zone having a customer come in and chat about their journey before we grill you with questions. So I'm really just going to hand over to you to give us an intro into why you feel so strongly about high-speed analytics and what your journey's been like.
Excellent. Thanks, Daniel. So I think we have the traditional BI stack where we've got, an online transactional database system that runs all of our claims and helps us manage all the administration that we need to do for the business. And on top of that, we've got, the traditional tables that are built into data marts and in warehouses and cubes and dashboards that sit on top of that. But it became clear that that current infrastructure that we had just wasn't meeting the needs of the analysts in terms of the sheer volume of data that we were collecting. So, if you look at it, we have about 240 million lines of claims every year. It's not that big, but I think the issue is that we're starting to collect more data from different data sources. So from tracking, your steps on your watch and your physical activity to tracking how well you drive in Discovery Insure. And that data is massive. So you're talking, 480 million lines per year just for the step data, another 700 million lines for the telematics data for when you drive. And the ability to get insights quickly from that data is paramount in a business where we need to be first to market, we need to be innovative, we need to be, doing the best we can to protect the lives of our members and make them healthier, live our values. So really it was around trying to get faster response from the data, being able to slice and dice that data quickly and interrogate complex interactions in the data. So cubes and dashboards, pre-processing, you kick that off overnight and you can come back the following morning and you've got a nice dashboard and a nice cube that you can do some basic self-service on. The issue is when you get asked a complex question, you need to look at the interactions in the data, and that you need to run, your standard SQL queries. And our legacy system, the queries that we were running and the volume of data we were running it on took about 10 hours to come back with an answer. And the problem with that is often if you make a small mistake in your SQL code, you only realize it 10 hours later, and then you've lost a day, and then you need to kick it off again and again. And the problem is if the question changes slightly, which it always does, because, there's more insights that get delivered, and the more insights that get delivered, the more questions come up. And what we did is when we partnered with BITanium to deliver the IBM product, the teaser, we ended up moving from that 10-hour turnaround time to get that data out to less than a minute. It was, sub-minutes to get the data back. It was phenomenal. And, basically the appliance paid for itself within the first 2 months, just in terms of the speed at which we could get to market, the innovation we could drive, the insights we could get. I mean, a number of times I've been sitting in virtual meetings now and being able to run queries in the meeting and get answers in the meeting for quite complex questions, which would normally have taken, a day or two, at least a week to put together the final insights. So it just makes it so much more responsive, a data analyst's job to be able to, come up with answers and to be able to interrogate the massive amounts of data that we're starting to collect.
Wow. That's quite a mouthful when you talk around all the aspects of what this project did. How many people were involved, Matthew?
In assessing it, it was probably me and probably one or two other people, but we had very good support from our partners in BITanium to set everything up and get the environment ready for our testing. And it literally took a week of testing. We had another competitive product that we were looking at, and both of them performed exceptionally well, but we were just sold on the ease of use, the plug and play of the IBM product.
Sure. That sounds like a model project. Douglas, there must have been a couple of areas where you had grey hair behind the scenes, or is what's written on the box what you gave to Matthew?
To be honest, Daniel, this is where this product has exceeded expectation year on year. It takes me back to when we started the POC with Discovery and everything like that. And I still get goosebumps hearing from Matthew around what we achieved in such short space of time, because it really does deliver high-speed analytics, very simple to deploy, it's very simple to use, and it's all about business value. And, just another bit of history that was in the making, and that is that the very first box that we brought into South Africa, it was over 10 years ago. It was for our friends down the road that have just closed shop at EdCon. And that box we effectively just turned off last month. So it survived from 2010 until now, which is same box, same everything, same technology, delivering value until the last day that we had to turn it off. So it does deliver, yes.
So Slawik, it sounds like before things are released, you've gone through almost kick testing it to make sure that it can go to a customer and plug in and do the job. How much testing do you do before you make a release available to us? What is some of the process, if you could just share that?
So it's a lot of testing, a lot of compatibility checking, and the performance, of course, because that's the biggest thing. So usually we work in the Agile methodology. So each actually sprint, each short period of time where we deliver some of the features has first and initial test included in it. So we are checking if the features and the functionality which is delivered is actually not causing any problems. But that's the first part. Later on, we've got the dedicated teams who are actually using the solution in the way how the customers would use. We've got a big platform on which we've got a lot of data we can actually look at, process, and check the results. And finally, there is also the dedicated phase, which is related to the configuration checking and some defaults parameters and setting up all the platform, because it's not just a small piece of appliance. It's a part of the bigger infrastructure where it needs to be placed.
And it's not an island of data. It's going to be pulling from everywhere. But that's actually not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about how data has changed over the years. for a chocolate for the panel, if you can tell me who coined the phrase business intelligence.
No, you got me there, Daniel.
Okay. In 1989, there was a dude called Howard Dresner. It seems to all be Americans, who proposed business intelligence as an umbrella term to describe concepts and methods to improve business decision-making by using fact-based support systems. And I use fact-based in inverted commas because we've seen what happens with some of the data. So I want to get back to how did we get there? And I want to ask you this, Douglas, from a partner perspective, how do you feel data has grown and the use of BI over the last decade?
We've seen huge change, Daniel, and I think if I just look at some of the financial institutions that we've been dealing with and the telcos, they went from possibly 10 years ago, possibly a terabyte or two per month, and now we're processing terabytes per day. And, in fact, we were in a discussion yesterday with one of the telcos, and effectively you're talking 10 terabytes plus per day that they have to consume. So the game has changed a lot. But I think what's important as well, and that is 10 years ago, we couldn't really action all the data that we had at our disposal. Whereas now with technology, we've got the ability to actually interrogate that, bring it all together, expose it to the business so that they can derive insights and value out of that data. So not only is it the growth of the data, but it's actually usability of the data that I think has been very important in this journey.
So it's not just about a catch net for something. We've got to turn it into actionable insights. Slawek, are you seeing customers getting that right more in the norm, or are we still in the infancy stages? Is Matthew just an outlier for getting it right and making the data talk to the organization, or are more people messing it up than ever before?
So I think people at the moment feel that there is a need for the next step. I believe it's probably not a very early stage, but it's just somewhere in the middle of the travel. So there is a big attention on the market towards those solutions.
So people are wanting to take this data. Matthew, do you think the explosion of data is being enabled more and more because of the edge? Why are we seeing this massive explosion of data across the environment?
Yeah, definitely. I think, with IoT and with everything generating data these days, so, all our call systems that we have at Discovery, they generate metadata in terms of, the duration of the call, the time of the call. There's a whole lot of operational logs. We're starting to, collect emails and actually analyze them after they've been responded to try and understand better ways of processing them. So a lot of it is collecting this operational data that before you just had to, manage at an operational level and trust that your call center and your email center were operating smoothly, do some spot audits. Now all that data is being produced inside these systems and is being analyzed with machine learning technologies like natural language processing, sentiment analysis, and the like. So there's a whole lot of additional tools to analyze the data which weren't available before, and the systems now actually produce those sets of data as IoT.
I love that. And I think one of our attendees has put in the chat, the benefits from crunching data are clear. Do you have equal efficiencies in sourcing, preparing, verifying, and governing the data? Is a mature data management capability a prerequisite to roll out high-speed analytics? And I guess I should ask Matthew or Douglas. We can't ask IBM's R&D area just yet. So Douglas, give me a comment on that.
100%. So you've got to make sure that you've got the relevant data that is exposed in a usable format, fully governed and everything like that. Let's be honest, it's about the result set that we're chasing, and the results have to be accurate. Now, accuracy is relative, I think. If you're chasing call center statistics or something like that, possibly a lesser degree of governance is required from that perspective. But if you look at all the regulations, Popia, all that type of stuff that is governing organizations right now, we need to have an end-to-end stack. And this is what's great about, and I'm going to blow IBM's trumpet a little bit, but their Cloud Pak for Data, which in the teaser is part of, does cover this end-to-end stack where we can actually govern the data, we can actually virtualize the data from the different areas and all of that good stuff. So, well, we're on to a winning recipe here, I believe, with IBM. And
I want to get into there, Matthew, your source systems of data, your sources of data, the ERP environments, the hospitals, all of that. How far is your responsibility as part of the BI team and the Highspeed analytics team? How far down the value chain do you go in order to make sure that the data is correct? Where does your responsibility get in there?
So, I mean, we do have teams who are responsible for the quality assurance of the data, and that's mostly from the existing systems that we run, our claims processing system, our authorization system, our admin and billing system, and they make sure that the data is representative of what's actually going on in that online system. So we do have that kind of quality assurance built in. The issue is with new data sources. So any data scientist worth his salt will know if there's garbage in, there's garbage out, and you need to understand the quality of the data you're getting in. So, I mean, when we're talking about the pathology results data that we receive via B2B from the various labs, we go down to the XML and review the XML and see what it looks like and understand what fields we want to try and parse out of it and bring into the Highspeed analytics.
Okay, so it's not a suck-in at all cost or irregardless of the cost. There is temperament that needs to go through from all the operational sides, and I think that's pretty good. We've got a question from the favorite name that I've seen on a panel in a while, Amberjack Pumpernickel, who says, how do we bridge the divide between insight and business value? How do we build cross-functional teams capable of translating insight into action? I really like that question, and I think it talks to Agile, but I don't want to answer that. Who's putting a hand up? Is it you, Slavik? Are you answering that one?
I believe that the key value and the key direction is actually to define the different roles and different personas, from those who are gathering the data, preparing the data, and those who are finally using BI tools to get the insights. But definitely it starts from gathering the data, cleansing them, and preparing further processing. And I believe that the one more aspect I would add to that, it was not mentioned yet, but I believe within that process, because of the amount of data, sometimes very big complexity of the queries and the difficulty to get the insights, we also think and actually already deliver that, where the machine learning and some artificial intelligence tools are in place to actually help with shortening the process and eliminating the potential errors. So that's the...
So once we've cleaned the data, and maybe this is coming back to you, Matthew, so we've got this ton of data. We've got data lakes forever. How do I turn that into something that I can use? Where do you go? Are you posed with a business problem and then you go and find the solution through the data? Or do you just have you got like a 22-year-old who's playing games and looking at data and looking for trends? What is your strategy behind it?
It's a bit of both, but it is mostly the business problems. And, you know, businesses these days have an endless amount of problems that they need to try and solve, need to be able to do things better. So I've got no shortage of problems to try and solve. It's the question about, you know, sitting down and thinking how to solve them. I think what you do need is a very strong leadership team and very smart people who are coming up with the right kind of questions. So, you know, I came from a consultancy way back when, where we had very limited data sets available to us. And our question there was, what can we do with the data? You know, let's try and slice it and dice it this way. Let's represent it that way. And when you get to a big data environment, it's almost a question you need to be very careful about which questions you try to answer, because if you try and answer them all, you're never going to get anywhere. You need to, you know, prioritize the most important business questions. And that often comes from senior management, you know, understanding where the business is going strategically and what kind of questions we need to answer to get it there.
Awesome. Dean has posed a question to yourself, Matthew, but I'm going to give it to all three of you. Would you agree with the following definitions? A data analyst makes sense out of existing data, and a data scientist works out new ways of capturing and analyzing data to be used by the data analyst. I think it's pretty spot, Dean. I think you could have put that in the chat. We're not even going to, I'm going to move on then and say, to what extent do you think people have got it right to turn data into actionable insights? So, Douglas, I'm going to go to you. You go to a number of customers where you've seen Matthew getting it right, and you've seen some that might be in the sales cycle that are not getting it so right. Where do you think we range in businesses today out of 10?
I'd like to sort of complement the answer with just on the previous point as well that Matthew brought to the table, and that is, if you think of far too often, I believe we adopt technology from an IT perspective, regardless of what business is driving. Okay. And I think that the tide has turned. We need to deliver business value, and it's about taking direction from business. What does business want? And I like the Agile approach, to be honest. To some of the failures that we've seen, we've seen companies wanting to build this massive, they're going to conquer the world. They're going to get all the data into one place, and they're going to deliver value deluxe. Right?
Build the stadium and they will come. Yay!
Exactly. And I can see Matthew laughing because it doesn't work. Guys, it's about taking a business problem, start small, just take one business problem, understand what business need, okay? Go and find the data, make sure that it's governed and everything like that, and then give them that so that they can turn it into actionable insights. So from what we've seen, okay, failures are generally based on more of an IT-driven approach versus the successes are where business takes hold of IT and says, give me the tools, enable me in order to get the results that I need.
So we haven't transformed our business digitally if we've moved our apps into the cloud. Are you saying that there's more to this transformation, Matthew? Are you having a chuckle at that? So is your data on-prem or are you in the cloud? And are you digitally transformed because of that?
So most of our data is on-prem due to the high, confidentiality and sensitivity of the data we have. I think, we're exploring putting the data in the cloud, but very cautiously. The data we do have in the cloud is typically data that is generated in the cloud. So our telematics service provider for our tracking of vehicles insured by Discovery Insure is a cloud-based operator, and therefore everything gets done in the cloud, which makes sense. If it's generated in the cloud, no need to pull it down and, analyze it on-prem, rather do the analysis in cloud. I think going back to that previous question and the differentiation between a data analyst and a data scientist, I think everybody's trying to move along the data analyst maturity model, which starts off with retrospective analysis and understanding what's going on to kind of forecasting, and then really moving further into the more of the data science realm, which is predicting what's going to happen and trying to moderate what that is. And then right at the end is the prescriptive analytics. If I do this, if I change the benefits this way, how is it going to impact the members in the years to come and improve their health? So that's really, kind of where, and the different role players in that, the data analysts, the data scientists, the data engineers, they all play a part along that continuum. And I think the data scientists play a lot more of a role in the predictive and the prescriptive analytics, where they take this data and they apply, more machine learning models to come up with some of the insights that a data analyst may not have the skill set to be able to do.
Yeah. So that's actually a great segue into Sanjay's question, which is how much time do you devote to debating and finding the right questions to answer? And all three of you have mentioned Agile in here, which is a key tenement to Agile, a key fundamental block to Agile. So are we all Agile fans? Is the secret to success of high-speed analytics being Agile, being able to pivot and getting the business and tech folk together? Is that a recipe for almost success, Matt?
No, I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't say that the Agile works particularly well when you have, multi-million rand business questions at play. You don't want to fail fast and make the wrong decision initially and then have to try and recoup, millions of rands of wrong decisions. So it is around getting to the right answer as quickly as possible. There will be iterations where, more insights are required to make the decision, but I think it is important. So we do apply Agile in a lot of the work that we do, but when it comes to analytics and providing, feedback to the senior leaders on decisions to be made, Agile is not that useful in my experience.
So we're talking about good old business consulting where we are going in and we are working at looking at those top 10 big issues. I'm going to ask Slavik, when you're in the R&D sessions and you're building these applications for release, how much of the business questions are coming through to you, or are you building that it can enable those for release so that you can give Matthew freedom to do what he wants to do?
So I believe it's a mixture, because part of our decision making is actually based on the challenges that customers sees, which are not easily possible to resolve with the system we have at the moment. So definitely some of those questions are part of the solution. But from the other hand, we've got full stack of additional capabilities we know we should deliver to give the full flexibility to the end user. So I would say both customer insight, customer questions, and the technical possibilities.
Douglas, this is a question for you. Is HSA only for the big guys? Is it only for Discovery and the top 4 banks? Is there anything middle of the road, or are we just in analytics now?
The game has changed, and I think high-speed analytics was expensive in the past. So it was for the big banks and everything like that. Although we've had one very small medical aid firm that's been on this high-speed analytics platform for, about 6 years now. Okay. So we do cater for that. But this is the exciting bit about where we're going to. And the fact that it's now cloud-enabled, you can start with a very small platform and you can grow into it. Or you don't go, whatever, it doesn't matter. But bottom line is that the entry point is a lot less now than it used to be. We can cater for everybody now.
So that gives you more money to pay for people like Matthew. That's amazing. Matthew, what did you do before you had high-speed analytics? Mistakes?
We waited. We waited for data. We waited for insights. A typical piece of analytics would take 2 weeks to deliver. And the business was understanding of that. They didn't have any other option. They knew that it would take 2 weeks to get all the right data together, make sure it was, correct, and to put together the presentation to feed that back. Sure. And I think now, to my detriment, business expects answers tomorrow. They're not waiting 2 weeks any longer. So it's, predominantly waiting and recycling of data if you can.
So then earlier, before you had this, you could be making the wrong decisions just because you didn't have a full data set. So good intentions, decisions with good intentions, but not the right data set.
Yeah, so I think we would never risk not having the right data set. I think we would just say it's not available yet. I'm rerunning the data. It's going to be another day or two before you get your answer. So it was just pushing out the business decisions further and further.
Wow. I'm going to ask a tough question of both Douglas and Matthew. What are some of the mistakes that you've made in getting to this journey that others could avoid, so that if we are on this BI journey and we're getting there, what are some of the errors that you've made before? I'll start with Douglas because he's been sitting there for ages.
We've made a lot of mistakes. And I think the one thing that we haven't done, and that is overpromised with this technology that we can employ. But I think the real justification when it comes to doing high-speed analytics and everything like that boils down to a use case that is going to add value. Okay, be that risk mitigation, be it growing the company, whatever it is that's going to be the driving force. I think sometimes we get caught up in cool technology. You know what? This is so cool and this is what we can do. Yeah. Okay. But that's looking at it from a technical perspective. Unfortunately, cool doesn't pay the bills. And we need to now focus on what's going to drive value for the business. So, don't focus on the cool, guys. Let's focus on what is real value. And trust me, this technology can deliver.
And that business case then can stand against the budget that's going on. And when it takes a little bit long to get there, you need the solid business case. So spend more time up front planning. Matt, any mistakes that we can avoid to getting there?
Yes, a couple. So the one is don't let just anybody on your high-speed analytics device.
Don't give me login. Basically.
Don't give me login. No. So it's very difficult to break. I don't think we've ever broken our Netezza, but we have, dragged it down to a crawl if an analyst runs a query on it, which is just a terrible query. It's not distributing the data effectively and the compute power effectively. it results in all sorts of bottlenecks, and it basically blocks up the whole appliance for everybody else. So the first thing is to make sure that your data scientists, your data analysts are trained specifically on the SQL needed for that appliance. It's typical anti-SQL, but it does have a few nuances that you need to be aware of. The second thing is data governance is very important. Garbage in, garbage out. If you don't manage it, it's going to turn into a big ugly swamp, and everybody's going to be utilizing all the compute power to try and clean up the data and understand it rather than, getting to insights. And I suppose the last one is space on these appliances is at a premium of a cost. So don't let your users fill up that space with temporary tables that they're never going to use again. Make sure that you've got a process where you go and clean out those temporary tables, because otherwise you end up with a massively bloated machine. It doesn't hamper the performance at all, but it does hamper the ability of the analysts to produce new temporary tables to get to those insights.
And when you're in cloud and you're paying space like that, it can come with a hefty price. Narcisa has asked, what's the best data collection techniques and methods that can be used for rural environments like the Eastern Cape, where ICT is challenged? And Narcisa, I'm going to answer that. We're talking about once this data's already got there. So I think you can reach out to Matthew, and if you've got an opinion, you could send it through, but we're not really going to be able to answer that right here. Then we've got another one from LT who's saying, what is your strategy, Douglas, when you go into an organization? How do you achieve or work towards business/IT alignment so that IT responds to business needs and not opting for the new shiny IT thing? I think you've answered that, but if you want to specifically give that a smash, what is a technique that you would use if you're getting into a new customer, we're going on a new BI journey, and we've got to get this alignment? Is there a tool that we could use?
To be honest, Daniel, I think it's more cultural within the organization that you have to address. But that's where it's nice to be an independent coming in. So we can put it out there that, if we get into too many meetings where it's just IT focused, nothing stops us from saying, guys, we cannot continue to get business involved. Okay. And, we do push the envelope because of our beliefs that we've got to do it right. So, but I think it's more around the culture of the organization. If it's not right and you've got, call it the tail wagging the dog, it's time to change.
Okay. I like that twinning of business and IT works really successfully, especially in a BI environment where we are going towards something unknown. Slavik, this one is for you. And I don't usually take anonymous attendees' questions. Be proud of who you are, man. Be proud. Put your camera on. Look gorgeous. But for use cases that interrogate both public cloud and private data sources, is there a high-speed compromise with our co-location? So are we losing out if we've got different sources of data? Slavik, I'm going to ask you that and then chuck to Matthew.
Yeah, so basically, I would say it was mentioned by Douglas already. I believe that the Cloud Pak for Data, our IBM platform, where the Netezza performance server is a part of that with the tools and machine learning, is the response for that, because the platform is capable to operate in the hybrid mode, where some of the data are gathered to the system from the cloud, some from prem. They are, of course, delivered in the way which is actually dedicated for the persona who is asking for the data, and then make the processing and deliver the solution. So awesome. I would say Cloud Pak for Data is the answer for that.
Okay, so we're not compromising if your data sources are on-prem and we've got cloud sources into the same high-speed analytics environment. It's how big is your pipe? Matthew, you wanted to comment on that one?
Yeah, not a hell of a lot of experience here, but I mean, from what we have experienced, these high-speed analytics appliances are so sophisticated that they make sure they do most of the processing that they need to do in the location where the data is before trying to bring the data together. So it'll separate the algorithms out and say, okay, so I need to pre-process all the data in the cloud a certain way, everything on-prem, and at the last possible moment, bring them together and join the data sets together to give you your insights that you need. So that is automated. You don't need to worry about, okay, I'm going to run all these queries here, all these queries here, and then I'm going to get a data set that I can bring down. It's a much smaller data set. pre-aggregated that I can then join. That happens on the fly seamlessly to the end user. So for me, that is the exciting part of this cloud pack.
So like Slavik's saying, it should be transparent to the user. It's actually, you don't worry about it. Where your data sets are, our appliance and the high-speed analytics environment's going to give you the same user experience. You know, there's stuff that happens that Slavik and Douglas do, but from an end user perspective, you shouldn't worry about it. Chris has got an interesting question. I guess that, Matthew, I told you you'd be spokesperson for today. Who is ultimately responsible in deciding which insights are actionable and which are not? Nice to knows as opposed to real value. Which teams drive this through the business in your case?
That's a very good question. So it's not usually the data scientists or the data analysts. It's usually business. It's usually, senior leadership, and they spend their days in meetings discussing challenges of the business and then prioritizing those based on potential return on investment and whether the pain points are in the business. And those come down to the analysts to get prioritized according to that. So we work very much from a top-down approach where the business questions are posed collaboratively. So we're involved in the framing of those questions, but really it is the thought leaders in the business who come up with a lot of the problems that need to be solved. On the other side, there are the occasions, and it's happening more and more these days, where the data scientists come up with new ideas that the business hasn't even thought of. So the great thing at Discovery is that anybody can innovate. It's not left to the research and development department and an innovation head or anything like that. Everybody can come up with ideas. We have many conferences, conventions, challenges, competitions to come up with exciting ideas, and that drives innovation, and it drives the kind of bottom-up approach to coming up with new ideas and new problems that are then shown to have a massive ROI and to be worth solving.
Okay, that's a great answer. And I think that fostering curiosity is a cultural thing. And as a consultant myself, you can feel it when you walk into a business. It's the GIS, give a sugar gene, that comes from higher management that allows people to be curious. And high-speed analytics is making it even more actionable and the impact felt. I think that's pretty cool. I'm going back on script here because we haven't asked half of our questions. And Douglas, I want to ask you, how does cloud impact architecting your analytics footprint for new customers that you're going into now? Are you just going in with a cloud first response in spite of what Matthew said earlier about data and sovereignty?
No, and I think the maturity of organizations in their data journey is going to dictate that. And I do like the messaging that we do, and that is it's hybrid. So it's a case of prepare for cloud. I think we all know it's coming. So as long as everything is cloud ready, then the organization can adapt as and when they need. Because at the end of the day, like Matt said, you need the data close. So it's no good adopting this massive cloud strategy and everything is on-prem. So that's the one thing. And then I think it's just, if you look at where businesses are gaining value right now, it's a case of they've got disparate data sources. They've got some data in the cloud. They've got some data on-prem. In fact, they've got data all over the place. And this is where the virtualization side of, call it the big data stack, is very, very important. And business shouldn't worry about where the data is. Let's be honest. That's an IT decision. Yeah. And IT should be making decisions based on price, performance, all that good stuff for business. But at the end of the day, they have to provide the data. And I think that's where the IBM product set does talk to that very nicely.
Okay. So I've got another question, which is for us who don't go into high-speed analytics, is high-speed analytics now just a label and it's going to become the de facto standard? I guess I'm asking you, Slavik, this question. Is high-speed analytics now superfluous? It's just analytics and high-speed is expected? Or is there different tiering to customers? We have high-speed analytics requirements and we have analytics requirements.
I believe, again, it's not the straightforward answer because I believe it's a mixture, but I would say that the high-speed analytics is at the moment must have scalability, flexibility. That's kind of the basement for every type of the use. Okay. So with such amount of data,
it's a ticket to the game.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Douglas?
I can talk to one of the financial institutions that we support and everything, and that is they've got data going back 15 years plus, and they need to keep that available so that people can do analytics on it. But if you had to put that in a very high speed or high performance analytic platform, it's going to cost you plenty. We would love it, but I think the bank would go bust. So bottom line is you need to segment the data. And this is where the data virtualization comes in. The user needs to see one view. I want to see transactions for the last 15 years, whatever it is. But at the same time, let's put the last 3 months of that data on a high-speed appliance. Okay, and then the last 3 years on a lesser appliance or whatever, okay, and then the history, okay, that's going to be queried ad hoc, okay, that can be on a very slow storage and everything like that. But it mustn't affect usability. The user's got to know, if I query old data, it just takes longer, but I've got to be able to query it. So,
but I guess that's where, Douglas, where you come into play is we're talking about what the reporting is for. If it's in context, if it's predictive, or if it's retrospective, and then we can break it out. So we don't have to one brush paints all. This is another IBM question for you. Do you offer guidance to people, to partners like Douglas, to Matthew, on how they should break the data, or are you just giving them the appliance?
We've got dedicated teams, our consultants, and even our engineers who, in the initial phase with great business partners, like, for example, BITanium, and, of course, other customers, we sit together and we provide the guidance. But since we do not know the business challenges and the answers they would like usually to get answered, they need to move forward by themselves later or use the dedicated services who are going to provide a solution. But initially, for every new capability, we've got a number of the sessions for business partners, for customers, to guide how to use it, how to actually start with that, and how to enhance the existing capabilities they already have.
Okay. That's awesome to know. So it's not just a box drop and then you have to go and poach Matthew from Discovery and get him to go and set up your environment. Come on, Matt, I'm selling you here. All right, I'm going to ask I wrap up the same way every session. I've asked you to prep on this for all of our attendees. It's not a surprise for the guys. Slavik, Douglas, I'm going to ask you, what's the most exciting thing coming out of your arena from a technical perspective in the next 6 months? So if you've got an early release you want to share with us, that would be brilliant. Then I'd like to know from the three of you, what is your personal focus for the next quarter? And then the last one, probably the toughest, for customers who are considering moving from a disparate BI environment into a high-speed analytics footprint, what one piece of advice would you give them? So Slavik, as the technical lead in the R&D area, what's coming out in the next 6 months from IBM that you're most excited for?
Let me start from in my opinion, one of the biggest steps we would like to deliver. It's going to be fully available on the Cloud Pak for Data, but it would be a Netezza performance server delivered in the software as a service model, where actually we open capabilities for partners and for us, for IBM, to give access to the smaller customers to just try before they decide to expand. This is what Douglas has said. So that's one of the exciting news which is going to be delivered in the second half of this year. I would say that another big step, which is actually a request from many of customers, is Netezza multi-tenancy on the system. I believe it would be kind of the game changer because it would allow the appliance to process more data in the completely independent, isolated ways. And the third one, which is also very, I would say, expected, it's enhanced scaling, and the scaling where you can compute when the system continues to be operational. So it's actually parallelizing of the processes. So that's, I would say, the three major things which are part of the next 6 months technical delivery.
Awesome. Then my next question for you was, what is your focus for the next quarter as the head of the R&D area? QA?
Of course, QA and delivery. I would say delivery is the most important. QA is also very important, especially that if we work on one piece and set of microservices related to high-speed analytics like IBM Netezza Performance Server, we need actually also pay attention for integration with other systems and the other microservices we've got on the platform, both for data governance, also for solutions related to the gathering and organizing the data. So it is quite complex process, and I believe that's actually not only for the next 3 months, but this is the story which we actually put on the top priority from the moment we released Cloud Pak for Data platform.
Awesome. Slavik, don't give us your advice yet. I want to go through Douglas and Matthew first. Douglas, what are you most excited about from a technological release in the next 6 months?
I think Slavik's covered most of the technical stuff. I think from our side, what we're seeing in the market is, and it's to your opening statement, Daniel, this pandemic has been horrible. We're seeing two sort of paths that companies are following right now. You've got the first company that's trying to recover and trying to get back on track based on what has happened. And then we've got the other companies that are capitalizing on the opportunity that the pandemic has actually given us, because everything has changed. So we would like to see a lot more companies just engaging and let us help you with this journey, bottom line, because it's been daunting, but at the same time, we've got to move forward, and we are seeing more opportunity now than we've ever seen in the past, which is great.
Okay. So I know your focus for the next quarter, close deals.
So
what's your focus?
My focus is, I've only got one focus, and that is to get more money out of Matthew in the next 3 months.
So what is your team focus? Are you running any big POCs?
We've got a lot of POCs going, but we are driving technical excellence. We always do, but it's a major focus right now. So we are upskilling on a lot of the new tech and also making sure that the certifications and everything are in place. Awesome. The team is hard at work with POCs. As I say, we've been busier in this last 6 months than we've ever been. So we are short of staff and everything. But at the same time, we've got a good team behind us, and we're chasing that.
So for our participants, if you want to put your CV together, douglasclarke.co.za. No, bring it on. And don't give us your advice yet. We're going to go to Matthew. Matt, what are you excited about from a technological perspective release in the next 6 months?
Just seeing what Douglas has got up his sleeve to show us, and what Slavik has been working on for the last, several months. It's almost unbelievable to think that something can be better than our existing Netezza appliance. It just does its job so well, so reliably, so consistently, that I'm looking forward to see what's next. I didn't even have an idea of what is possible next. I think probably one thing I would like to see in the future is more of an integration of the data processing and the data science world in a single kind of environment. So at the moment, a lot of the predictive analytics is done outside of Netezza, even though it does have some capability within it. And I'd like to see more of those data science tools moving, into the high-speed analytics appliance if possible.
So that what-ifing, that'll be great. And then your personal focus for the next quarter, apart from chairing global forums and trying to get out of the office every now and then?
It's around new data sources. And I mean, the exciting one that we're mining quite heavily at the moment is the pathology results. So we started way back when looking at HIV results, trying to provide better management of our HIV population, looking at their viral loads and their CD4 counts. And that spilled over recently into, trying to manage diabetics better, looking at the HbA1c results. But I think we're looking at using pathology more for the acute conditions now and less for sort of the management of chronic conditions. And we're seeing a lot of interesting papers on using these results to indicate, the probability of having a really bad hospital admission and trying to stop that from happening. So really trying to, ensure our members remain healthy and that they are protected. So that would be our kind of next drive.
Not to punt you at all, but I thought your CEO's COVID presentation on the BI was outstanding. Outstanding. So what advice would you have, Matthew, for someone that's going onto this high-speed analytics journey?
Don't underestimate the importance of a strong BI team and a strong BI partner. It is very important to understand how BI plays a very important role here. And then also understand where your bottlenecks are. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. If you don't understand, why you aren't able to do high-speed analytics at the moment, or you were in the past and you're not now, figure out what the bottlenecks are and try and solve for those. And high-speed analytics appliances are one way to solve for those.
Awesome. Douglas, as succinct as Matt, one piece of advice for someone that's considering a high-speed analytics platform as a way to go forward.
The best thing that I can offer advice on is basically start small, focus on a business area that is really going to add the value, okay, and then take it through the process. Our advice is for free, so give us a call. We've been down this journey with a lot of customers, and we would love to, as I say, advice is for free. We'll give you that advice.
I love the free. So to all our attendees, Douglas again, send CV, ask advice. Brilliant, Douglas. That's brilliant. From Poland, all the way in the R&D environment, without punting your own application, what advice would you give to a customer, Slavik, who's considering high-speed analytics?
So there are a couple, because I believe a lot of was already said, especially by Douglas, because we provide also some of the basic hand-holding at the beginning. So first of all, start small and start using the platform. I believe that for the future users, the great opportunity would be one of those features I just mentioned, software as a service capability, because you can try small and really try to use environment in the pay and go model, which is not expensive. Also, I believe contact people like Douglas in context of their experience and prove the concept. And the third one, which is actually kind of, I would say, PR about what we do in Krakow. We've got our, I would say, proof of concept center with Netezza performance server and the whole environment. So for those customers who would like to actually make a benchmark how the system could behave, they can contact us, bring their data into the system and see how the system is performing and if it fulfills the expectations.
Awesome. Slavik, all the way from the warm summer climates of Europe, thank you for giving us your time. Douglas from, 4 ways, same as me. So very uncool. Thank you for being an amazing guest on this. I know it was a bit nerve-wracking. It's not your space that you enjoy being peppered with questions, but you answered really well. And then Matthew, the star of the show, the Brad Pitt of BI, they call him. Ladies, unfortunately, he's married, but he is on a number of boards. If you want to go and chat to Matthew from a BI perspective on a journey, he volunteers for a lot, so get out there and do it. From my side, Daniel Robus, this has probably been the most intimidating session to facilitate because it's so way out of my league. But thank you to my panelists for making it so easy. Kerry, back to you.
Thanks again, guys, for attending today. I really do hope that you found today's session insightful and that we've answered some of your questions. Please always do reach out to us. There's people here to help. If you need any further guidance, we can put you in touch with the relevant teams. Cheers from Tech Central. Stay safe and warm, and see you guys at the next one.